Good morning, everyone. I'm Laura Mann, and I'm just here to introduce this session. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to ask a favor of the audience. And that is, for those of you who are sitting like 9 rows back, do you think you could come in a little closer? I think everyone in this audience who's ever presented knows that it's so much nicer when your audience's faces are in focus. And I promise the presenters won't bite.
I can't promise.
Thanks, Coven. So this is the third of our Partners in Conversation series. It's a new format for MCN. And this morning we have Lucy Schwartz and Courtney O'Callaghan from Google and from the Freer Sackler Galleries to talk to us about Google Cultural Institute and probably other things. And so thank you to both of them. And one more favor to ask of the audience, that is, please fill out your surveys that we will distribute a link to at the end of the conference so that you can tell us everything about your experience at MCN, but particularly some feedback about the Partners in Conversation series would be great because it's an experiment for us this year. So without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to our panelists, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura. Maybe we'll just start with a quick introduction. So I'm Lucy Schwartz, and I'm the US Program Manager for the Google Cultural Institute. That means that I work very closely with all our partners here in the US. We're very lucky, we have a lot. And before that, I was also part of the Cultural Institute, but focused on other countries such as France, Spain, Latin America. So that's me.
I'm Courtney O'Callaghan. I'm the Chief Digital Officer at the Freer and Sackler Galleries. Those are the Asian art museums of the Smithsonian. And we've been working with Google for quite a long time, so we're excited to be part of this conversation. Which sort of brings us into the very beginning. What is Google Cultural Institute, for those who don't know?
So Google Cultural Institute, it is Google's nonprofit initiative to collaborate with cultural organizations around the world with the mission and goal of making culture accessible to anyone, anywhere. So we have a broad range of technologies that we make available to our partners, and they decide how they want to use them. And one of these platforms is what we call the Google Arts and Culture, or Google Arts and Culture. It's both an app and a website, and I'm just going to show you a quick video to give you an idea of what it's like, and then I can continue with more context. Oh.
Inspiration is spread around the globe, across space and time, in the places we love, and with the people of our past. Art has changed the way we see the world and the way we see each other. We started with simple tools for food and fire, and then carved statues of myths and heroes. And we built monuments to last forever. There is so much to see, learn, and experience. With the Google Arts and Culture app, you can immerse yourself in 360-degree views using Google Cardboard. Or zoom in to reveal the secrets of a masterpiece.
So I'll stop here. But really, what we do is provide technologies, including digitization tools such as what we call the art camera, which is a photo camera that digitizes artworks in extremely high resolution, allowing you to really zoom in and see artworks at extreme level of detail. A museum view, which is a street view for indoors and creating 360 panoramas of galleries and virtual tours of historic sites. And then platforms for managing content, so adding new artworks or objects, removing them, editing them, and telling stories around your collections. And finally, there's a broad range of publishing platforms. So where do you want your content to appear? Is it on mobile? Is it on VR, so with Cardboard, that virtual reality device? Is it on Chromecast, Chrome browsers and so on. So it really is all about these tools and how museums want to use them, and it's really about this collaboration with the museums. And that actually leads me to ask you, Courtney. So today we're very lucky we have 1,200 partners around the world. But 5 years ago when we started, it was 17 institutions, and the Free Sackler was one of the very first partners to trust us and try working with us. So it'd be great to hear about, your point of view on our collaboration.
Sure. Can you go to the next slide? So in 2011, we were approached by Google and asked if we wanted to do something that was called Street View, but inside of our museum. And that was completely novel to us. They showed up with this giant machine and walked through and created images of every single room. This is now something that you all know. You've seen it. We're very comfortable with it. But at the time, it was bizarre and fantastic. And so with 17 other museums, we launched this Street View capability within our building. Most of you probably know that, most of the world has easier access, obviously, to internet than they do to airplanes or to coming and seeing your museum in person. And so having this ability to have people walk through just seemed fantastic. And we knew it wasn't going to take away from the amount of people who came to our museum. If anything, it opened up the scope of people who might even consider coming if they had those assets. We put 200 of our artwork pieces up for us. That was a big deal at the time. And we worked with Google to do the high-resolution imaging, which was called Gigapixel at the time, of Whistler's Princess from the Land of Porcelain. That is up in our collection. In 2013, the Smithsonian started to participate in this project. We added images from our archives collection, a large quantity of photos, and American Art, Portrait Gallery, Cooper Hewitt all joined the Cultural Institute. To make it available for the entire Smithsonian, we worked with our general counsel to create a contract that made it very clear to each of our museums what they could and couldn't do with Google. And for a giant facility, which is really what Smithsonian is, that was a really important barrier to get over so that everyone wasn't going to general counsel and spending months trying to figure out if they could do one thing. Now we knew that anything that GCI gave us was something that we could try. 2014, 2015, we also worked to bring a lot more content into Google Cultural Institute. For us, we threw in all of our images, which was 36,552. We have others that are contemporary pieces, but we don't have rights to put those up. We put a base level of metadata. We did another gigapixel of 2 enormous Japanese screens. We created one of the partner apps, and we started doing Google Cardboard tours. And it's just been a really interesting experience for us. On top of that, we worked a little bit with Expedition. I don't think it's on the next one. We worked with Google Expedition, and we worked on some collaborative projects that we'll talk about in the end. What has Google Cultural Institute as an aggregator of content done with other museums than us?
I think something that I did want to mention about the Free Sackler and what you've done that's been quite different from, or very interesting in the way you've been working with us is how you've kind of used our technology in a kind of low-risk way, so really kind of playing with a lot of our pilots on kind of small projects that were not, too disruptive to what you were already doing, and then using that as kind of trying it, looking at the results, and then kind of showing that to other people at the museum and saying, okay, this is what we can do. So really that kind of very, I would say, incremental way of working, and also adding that as an additional layer to what you were already, what the museum's priorities already are, or the programming, is, I think, a great way of doing it, because you're kind of avoiding presenting, these new technologies as a whole new project. We know that all museums are, have just so many things to do, so many priorities, and like all these very small teams to do it. So I think the idea really is that we want to help and we want to make sure that we can really kind of blend into what you're already doing, and that's what's been great.
That was really important for us because we did not have the bandwidth to have Google Cultural Institute be a necessary partnership in that we couldn't have our systems based on it. We are a larger institution. We have systems that are in place that have become, our enterprise solutions. But being able to have this be more of a collaborative partnership meant that some of the stress was taken off of us on whether or not we even wanted to do something. So sometimes we have no bandwidth and we're like, yeah, that sounds awesome, and we hope that other museums do a really great job. And sometimes we've been like, yes, we'd like to be the first and we want to do whatever it takes to see how this works.
And maybe on like other examples of museums, I think an interesting also kind of parallel is like large institutions versus smaller museums. And like the Free Sackler is an interesting example because you are part of the Smithsonian, which is this huge organization. And at the same time, you've been able to move really fast. And I think that's what we've also noticed is that you can think that maybe the large museums are going to be doing the most, but small museums are very often very agile, and as a lot of you probably know, also have been able to sometimes really be kind of some of the pioneers or really kind of first institutions to kind of play with the technology and really work with us on that part. So I did want to mention one example, which is the Dulwich Picture Gallery, a museum in South London. They've been working with us for a few years now, and they published their online collection, and then for the past couple of years, they've really been one of the close partners to kind of pilot and share a lot of feedback and really test some of the most recent features, such as Google Cardboard. So in the top right corner, this is actually. They were one of the first museums to actually create a virtual reality tool when we had that technology and we started making it available to museums. So it being able to kind of create these, guided 360 tours, and they actually partnered with a children's hospital to kind of really bring that technology to a group of people that obviously were not able to physically actually go there. So that was a really interesting to see how they found it interesting for their goals. And then. In the lower right corner, this refers to what we call the art recognizer. So that's actually even more recent. That's something we've just been piloting this year, and we haven't really rolled it out yet. But it's basically using your phone as an image recognition technology, allowing you to point your phone at an artwork and it kind of recognizes it instantly with no photos being taken, no internet connection needed, and allowing you to kind of provide additional information, text, audio, and so on. So they've been, also one of the first 3 partners kind of working on it, and their feedback has been really valuable. So these, institutions can definitely be great examples of incorporating the technology when in smaller structures as well. I know we don't have much time, so I'm not going to focus too much on, but there was another example, the Boijmans Museum in the Netherlands. They've been, also really taking advantage of a lot of the technologies we've been providing. This is just an example of a great exhibition they created where, a lot of museums, institutions we work with, when you talk about online exhibitions, they kind of feel like it's a huge amount of work. It's about, the kind of like, you have to have the same amount of work almost as what you have in a physical exhibition. But it's not really what, I think online you can really think about this differently. It's really about storytelling, about telling stories. It can be about highlighting, an artist, a moment in history. It can be about one artwork. And this exhibition actually, to me, is a great example because it's actually, I'm going to try to actually show it in a normal way. No, it seems to be a bit funny, but anyway, they kind of did this really deep dive on one artwork that is the Tower of Babel and one of their masterpieces, and told all the stories that are behind this amazing artwork. And so that was just a great example of how you can use that technology to actually, think creatively and not necessarily have it as a kind of crazy new project. They've also been using our art camera technology to digitize their collection, VR as well, and so on. So just another interesting example to think about.
If you move to the next slide.
Oh, no, sorry.
Yeah, I think you've got 2 more in there. Collections or 3. Go back
This one?
one.
All right.
Mentioning small museums, I did actually want to mention that the Smithsonian is not all just one large museum, which I think you all know, but we also financially are not all one large museum. So we do have some very small museums with staffs under 35. And that's where I've seen other partnerships with Google and other content aggregators as really almost necessary, which is a little different than where we are in the position. But I wanted to point out one of those, which is the Postal Museum. They had a very old website. It was on a content management system that nobody on their staff could manage. It had been made long ago, and then they hired people who just couldn't deal with it. And while they were having it rebuilt, which took, as you know, like a year or 2 years, they decided to really leverage the ability to make those exhibitions that you just saw. And it was a low barrier of entry, and it meant that they were not producing large quantities of code while also making an alternate site. So it was really a great a way to save time, but it's also now a way for them to participate in different projects that GCI has when they're highlighting certain people or certain events, and they have 22 exhibitions that they can submit for those. For us, we found that using the exhibition module was really nice for adding information that otherwise our web people wouldn't have time to do. So this was a blog post by our director, and it was very good, but very long and had one image. We ended up breaking it up on GCI and put images in for each of the sections that he was talking about. And because it was part of Google, we were also able to put street views and the 360s of the different places that we were discussing about Palmyra. Another piece for us is that low barrier to entry. So here is our teen night, and the teens wanted to, our teen ambassadors wanted to show some of the locations that our art came from, especially the sculptures, you know, the stupa, the general gardens near it, and they were able to create Google exhibitions that were in VR. And then they had cardboards that they let the teens build and decorate. And then they went over to the pieces of art, looked at the pieces of art, and then looked at the exhibition. And because the exhibition did not have the piece of art in it, it had the supplemental information. We're not talking about something where people never look at the art. They're just staring at their phone or the camera in it. They were looking at it and then taking it down and looking back. And it was rated as the second favorite to the DJ of all the events that they had on their Teen Takeover night. I mentioned this before, but I wanted to point out, when Google was looking to do expeditions, they came to their GCI people who had already started creating content that was similar in the exhibitions, and we were lucky to be able to take advantage of that and be one of the partners. That is one of the big takeaways that I've gotten about being partners with different content aggregators. You end up in a position to take advantage of opportunities that otherwise would not be there. And if you do not participate in the partnership, they just don't know that you're there. So that leads us to honoring Nepal. This is our use case, and I know we have about 1 minute, so we'll go fast. Project description. On April 25th, 2015, devastating news emerged from Nepal as massive earthquakes caused high death tolls, injuries, and widespread destruction. 1 year later, this exhibition honors Nepal's distinct contributions to art, culture, and history. The partners were put together by the Rubin Museum of Art, and they asked the British Museum, us, the Freer and Sackler Galleries, the Life Photo Collection, the Dr. I'm going to ruin this, Bao Daj Lad Mumbai City Museum, LA County Museum of Art, Nepal's Children Museum, the Newark Museum, and the Royal Ontario Museum to contribute any images they had of Nepal before and after. We really enjoyed working on this because, this sounds terrible, not because of the content, which was very important to us, and we had been actually digitizing slides we had from the 1960s of Nepal to help with some of the relief effort of rebuilding the different structures. But we were so overwhelmed at that moment with other projects that had another museum not put this together and had the barrier not been so low to participate, we would not have. Because we had all of our images up on GCI and it was easy to upload a few more, we were able to point out which ones we wanted, have them uploaded into the exhibition, and be part of a project that we were really proud of, without having to sacrifice weeks and weeks of time that we actually didn't have, or to do what most of us don't ever want to do, which is say, that's a really amazing, important project and we can't participate.
Yeah, something I wanted to add about this. I think this was like, for us, it was a really amazing project. It just kind of happened in a few weeks. It was really impressive. We basically got an email from the Rubin Museum of Art saying, is this even possible to have, collaborative exhibition on the platform? And we were like, yeah, okay. And then they just started contacting all their friends at the museums and getting all this amazing list of museums together to really remember and celebrate Nepal's culture, location, and art. And then the only thing we had to do was, follow up with each of these museums and make sure everyone was in the loop. And we just had to switch what we call third-party curation, which allows other institutions to use a collection. And then they all work together in a really beautiful way, I think. It went live for the anniversary. And then something that was also really, really cool was that after that, each museum really promoted that also, and there was a really strong, I think, moment where everyone was sharing on their social media with using, one hashtag, and it just was a really cool moment.
We knew it was going to be pretty, but having all the people's different pieces in there was just amazing. Sorry.
Yeah.
So it gave us a lot of images to put on social media, and that is always nice to have.
So yeah, well, I'm just going through it, but I think
that's about it.
That's about it. So yeah, questions.
That's one of our images from our slides, if you go back. So these were the slides that we had started digitizing because of the earthquake. It made them very time sensitive. Yes?
I was wondering, how do you promote, actually from both points of view, how do you promote individual exhibitions or content? Do you do it on your website, and how does GCI do it?
Could you repeat the question for the recording?
We were asked, how do we promote the content that we create on GCI? For us, we make sure that social media shares any of the new pieces, especially the Google Cardboard experiences. We found bringing them into real-life experiences, like our Teen Takeover, is a great way to spread the word more virally, so it isn't just coming from our social media, but it's coming from others who are trusted sources to different communities. And we have been very lucky to have GCI promote us on their homepage, and we get new audiences from that.
Yeah, so on our end, we're lucky to have lots of new exhibitions launching very regularly, and I think we have various ways we can promote, and different levels that we can activate depending on the moment. So our social channels are definitely what we use the most. Because that's like a feed to what's new on the platform. Since we changed the interface of the platform this summer, and since then we've have a daily digest of content on the homepage that changes every day. So that's and that's the same on the app. So really what's new on the platform is really what is on there. And then, of course, anything that's timely, anything that's related to an event, anything that's, and in that case, obviously, that was the case. And whether it's us tweeting about it or kind of sharing it on social media or retweeting or resharing what our partners are doing, we really kind of, it's even easier when we can do that. And then in some cases when we have, we do these, we say thematic projects like a few times a year where we will collaborate with a group of institutions around a specific theme. So, it can be performing arts, it can be Black history and culture, it can be natural history like we did last September. Day of the Dead, absolutely, last week. In these cases, is something that we'll be able to support with more resources in a kind of bigger way because it's, it's kind of a planned in time, and in that case we'll get marketing. So sometimes we'll be able to promote on the Google homepage, which is very rare, but it sometimes happens. We have press outreach, and then sometimes we'll do something on YouTube or things like that. So it's I would say it really depends. New exhibitions, same here. If there's it happens that it's an anniversary of an artist and we have a beautiful exhibition about that artist, we might try to kind of match a doodle with some kind of... So, we try to kind of make the most use of Google's very vast, entities, but, it's not always easy. So it's a case-by-case thing. But there's like a lot to pick from.
We are able to see analytics. We were not able to see analytics originally, and we thought of GCI in some ways as just another one of our social media platforms, a way to get our content out to other audiences. And as social media analytics have evolved, so have these, and same thing.
Matt?
It actually is a lot like that, although maybe, so I'm a big fan, as you know, of this, and I can see sort of 3, 4, 5 years down the road, this is actually like kind of like YouTube. It's like a really legitimate place you've got to be putting your stuff because it's got its value there. But between now and then, right, there's sort of the early experimental, like, well, what can we do with this? We can get access to Google, we can do this. But I'm being asked a lot now, which I think is a good sign, it's a sign of maturity, is to justify and value the time spent on these things, almost in an ROI perspective. You know what I mean? So that's good because people who think like that are paying attention. So how do you value, because it's not the 1,400 people who maybe stumbled into one of these things, right? Because it's way more work than that merits. But it's also working with Google. It's also looking sort of to the future. What's the calculus there?
At first, we just fit it in anywhere we could because we could not justify it in a way that people higher up found legitimate. And that is also true, though, about Facebook and Twitter and all of those. So we sort of followed the same path of, well, this could take off. And if it does, we don't want to be last. And museums are often last. It would really be nice if we were, maybe first or even fifth. And since then, with the different partnerships, that has really given us some meat behind the, bone of, no, this is useful, I swear. And seeing how people, just general people, have started creating exhibitions with the pieces that we've put up there of everything from Sotatsu or everything that has whistlers, ladies in it. And seeing that has also shown them that this is another way to share our content. And if that is our goal, if our goal is not to hoard our content, but to actually make sure more people see it, then we need to be here. We need to be here because some of our audience is here. Audiences that do not usually look at Asian art are here. And it would be nice if we can convert them over to not just being lovers of American art or lovers of bumblebees in the Natural History Collection, but lovers of bumblebees in paintings from, 1100. I don't know if that's helpful.
No, I haven't followed how much I was thinking about, and then it fell through. But thank you. Oh, it was about, sorry, just a quick, easy question, is you said third-party curation or something, like, we don't have that term, but
No.
other people can make stuff with your,
It's for other institutions, yes.
Okay.
Yes, no, not anyone, just the other partners. Yeah, and the museum has to kind of want to use
And it's
by default,
by
it's not.
exhibition, not everything.
Yeah.
It's not like suddenly everybody and their mother can come in and start,
Yeah.
changing out all your exhibitions.
Exactly. Yeah.
Do any of these platforms also have tools to work with moving images, with video?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Actually, initially there was a video right here, actually. So you can have video in the exhibition as well as use it as a caption if you have like an artwork and you want to use like a video of
Does it have to be posted on YouTube?
yes.
We also have an exhibition that has audio in it that plays as you go to each screen. So if you want to listen to it while you're looking at the images, I have a 7-year-old and I've found that he will actually sit and listen to it and learn about different pieces of art, and he thinks it's fantastic because someone's reading to him. And we created that into a cardboard experience also, and I was testing it at home. We had only gotten halfway through, and the audio said, and now we're going to go into the peacock room, and it ended. And he takes it down and he looks at me and he's like, Mom, I need to see the peacock room. And that is not something I expected to hear from him.
Anyone last question? No?
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.